What is flowchart here? So it is a pictorial representation or graphical representation of an algorithm. So here pseudocode is nothing but the abstract representation of program in English language. Testing is the process of checking whether the program works according to the requirement of the user. Hello to all, a warm welcome to my new session. I'm Revati, faculty, Department of Computer Science, Vidhyaashram Pre-University College, Temple of Excellence, Mysuru. Today we are on the fifth session of fifth chapter, and the chapter name is Problem Solving Methodology. In my today's session, at the beginning, I'm going to deal with the advantages of flowchart. That means, suppose if I use flowchart, what are the advantages I'm going to have? Along with that, I'm going to discuss the disadvantages of having flowchart. Then I'm going to deal with pseudocode. Along with that, I'm going to explain coding or programming. That means how to write the program. Along with that, I'm going to discuss what is testing. Along with that, I'm going to discuss what is debugging. At the end, I'm going to discuss what is syntax error, what is semantic error, what is runtime error, and what are the logical errors I'm going to get. Before going to start my today's session, let me to recall the things what I had discussed in my previous session. In my previous session, I started with writing flowchart along with the algorithm. That means whatever the complex or simple problem I'm going to have, that should be written into algorithm first. Later, I'm going to convert that algorithm into my flowchart. So here computer is an electronic machine and it is dummy machine, because here computer is going to perform all the operations based on the instruction. Now tell me, who is responsible for providing the instruction to the computer system? That is, human beings are responsible for providing instruction to the computer system. Then what kind of instruction the human beings are going to provide? That should be written in some programming language. So here we are going to have high level programming language, and whatever the instruction I'm going to provide to my computer system, before that, at the beginning, I'm going to write an algorithm for the instruction. After that, I'm going to convert my algorithm into flowchart. Once I done with my flowchart, then I'm going to write the coding of that flowchart. So in my last session, I started writing an algorithm to find the area of a square along with the flowchart. Then we had discussion regarding the swapping of two numbers. That means at the beginning, I'm going to write an algorithm. Later, I had written the flowchart. Then we had discussion regarding area and circumferences. That means how to calculate the area as well as circumferences. And at the end, we had discussion regarding how to find the largest of two numbers. These are the four different algorithms as well as flowcharts we discussed in my previous session. Moving further, in my today's session, I'm going to discuss what are the advantages of using flowchart. So, what is flowchart here? So, it is a pictorial representation or graphical representation of an algorithm. Now, what is algorithm? Here, algorithm is nothing but the finite sequence of instruction used to solve given problem, or it is mainly used to solve particular problem. Now tell me, what is the advantage if I'm going to use flowchart? Here, flowchart provides an excellent means of communication. That means in flowchart, I'm going to write all the sequence of steps. That means I'm going to write the diagram or pictorial representation of all the sequential steps. So it gives the excellent means of communication, which can be very easily understood by the user. Then it has got finite procedure. That means it's going to include finite sequential instruction. That means step by step instruction, and whatever the instruction I'm going to have, that includes finite number of instruction. Then which shows all the major part of program. Along with that, it's very easy to convert it into program. That means, so here the flowchart gives the pictorial representation of an algorithm. So it's very easy to convert flowchart into program. Then the another advantage here is independent of programming language. That means whatever the flowchart I'm going to draw, that is completely independent of any programming language, and it is very easy to debug as every step has got its own logical sequence. So these are the certain advantages of using flowchart. Moving further, let's see the disadvantages of using flowchart. So what is the first disadvantage here I'm going to have? It is time consuming, because at the beginning I'm going to write an algorithm. Later I'm going to translate my algorithm into the flowchart. So it is a time consuming, and it requires use of number of symbols. That means to draw the flowchart, I'm going to have certain symbols. I want to use only those symbols in order to draw my flowchart. Then what is the next disadvantage I'm going to have here? That is, it represented of complex logic is difficult in a flowchart. That means it is very difficult to represent complex logic. That means when I'm going to have simple logic, in that time I can very easily use flowchart. And if I'm going to have complex problem and I'm going to have complex logic, that time I cannot able to use flowchart. That is the second disadvantage. Then what is my third disadvantage here? That is, if I want to make any alteration or any modification, can be only made by redraw the flowchart. That means you cannot able to modify or alter the existing flowchart. That means if you want to make any modification or alteration in your flowchart, then what you want to do? You want to redraw that flowchart once again. So these are the some of the disadvantages of flowchart. Moving further, I'm going to have pseudocode. So what is pseudocode? Why I required pseudocode? What is the use of pseudocode? So here pseudocode is nothing but the abstract representation of program in English language. That means whatever the problem I'm going to have, that one I'm going to represent in the form of English statement. In pseudocode, English words and phrases are used to represent operations. That means whatever the operations I want to perform, that is written by using English words as well as phrases. And it is very easy to read and understand and modify. So here pseudocode is nothing but the abstract representation of program by using English statement. Moving further, I'm going to have coding as well as programming. That means coding itself, programming. Now tell me why I required coding. What are the different kinds of programming language I have here? So in our first PUC, we are going to use C++ programming language. That means to write any program, we are going to use C++ programming language. So the process of writing program instruction for an analyzed problem in a programming language. So here coding or programming is nothing but it is a way of writing program. Here program is nothing but the instruction for an analyzed. That means we are going to have the problem. I'm going to analyze the problem. I'm going to write the algorithm. I'm going to convert the algorithm into flowchart. After all the activities are over, now I'm going to write the programming instruction. That means the process of writing program instruction for an analyzed problem in a programming language. So here coding is nothing but the process of translating an algorithm or flowchart into the syntax of given programming language. That means, for example, if I consider C programming language and suppose if I'm going to code by using C programming language, what I'm going to do? I'm going to translate an algorithm or flowchart into my C programming language. That means I'm going to follow the syntax, semantics, rules, everything. Based on my programming language rule, I'm going to write the program. So you must convert each step of algorithm into one or more statement in a programming language such as C or C++. That means in coding process, what we are going to do? We are going to convert each and every step of an algorithm into my programming language. That means now I'm going to start my program. That is nothing but coding. Now where I'm going to get the resource? That means I'm going to use an algorithm or flowchart, and whatever the information I'm going to get from the algorithm or from the flowchart, based on that I'm going to start my coding. That means I'm going to start writing my program. Then what are the programming language I can able to use? That is, you can able to use C or C++ or Java or Python. That is left to the user. So here coding is nothing but the programming. Moving further, I'm going to have testing as well as debugging. So what is testing? Here testing is nothing but the process of checking whether the program works according to the input. That means we are going to feed or enter the input data in order to check whatever the program we have written that works properly or not. So testing is the process of checking whether the program works according to the requirement of the user. Then what is debugging? So here debugging is the process of identifying and correcting or removing the bugs or errors. So here debugging is nothing but the process of finding error or fixing the error. So that is itself called bugs. That is nothing but the errors. When I'm going to concentrate on testing, we are going to have unit testing, black box testing, white box testing, along with that structural testing, then integration testing. These are the some of the types of testing. So here testing is nothing but we are going to check whatever the program we developed that works according to the user requirement. Then how I'm going to check? By providing the input. Then debugging. So what is debugging? Debugging is nothing but the process of finding error or fixing error, or it is the process of removing error is called debugging. Here error is nothing but the bugs. So both are same. I can able to use the word bugs or I can able to use the word error. So there are 4 types of errors we are going to have, that is syntax error, runtime error, semantic error and logical error. Let's see these types one by one. So at the beginning, I'm going to have syntax error. So what is syntax error? That means in our programming language, we are going to have certain syntax. That means we are going to have certain format and I want to write the program based on that format. That means I'm going to follow certain rules and certain regulation. So here syntax error, that means syntax is the set of rules. That means I'm going to use the word rules. So here syntax is nothing but the set of rules which should be followed while creating the statement of program. That means here syntax is nothing but the set of rules or procedures and I want to follow those rules while I'm going to write my program. Then the grammatical mistake in the statement of the programs are called syntax error. That means whatever the grammatical mistake I'm going to make in my program or in my statement, that is itself called syntax error. Now consider this example. So this is the example for syntax error. So while writing these code, I want to follow certain rules. So what is the syntax error I'm going to have? So here I'm going to get one syntax error. That means whatever the output or whatever the result I want to display, that should be written inside the double quote. So here I'm going to have ending double quote, but what about starting double quote? So here I'm going to have single quote. So this is my first syntax error. Then what is the next syntax error I'm going to have? That is, after printing this statement, I want to end my statement. That means that is indicated by using semicolon. So these are the 2 syntax error I'm going to have in my program. Moving further, I'm going to have runtime error. So these are the error it's going to execute or it is going to occur during runtime. So during execution of the program, some error may occur. So what is runtime? That is nothing but the execution time of your program. That means while executing your program, you may get the error. That kind of error itself called runtime error. Such errors are called runtime error. Then give me some of the example here. Suppose if you divide any number by 0, you are going to have divide by 0. So these kind of errors we are going to get during the execution. And some more example here, array index out of bound. That means, for example, think that you want to create some memory space. For example, I'll write a of 5. That means I'm going to assign or allocate 5 memory location for A. And while executing or while running my program, I may request some other memory space, that means more than 5. That time what's going to get? I'm going to get the error, that is nothing but the array index out of range. These are the some of the errors we are going to get during the execution of the program. Moving further, I'm going to have another type of error, that is semantic error. Now tell me, what is semantic error? So what is error? That is mistake in our program or mistake in my program. So whatever the error it may be, that may be syntax error, semantics error, runtime error or logical error. So an error which occurs due to improper use of statement in programming language. That means in our programming language we have syntax. So here syntax means what? That is once again a set of rules or set of procedure I want to follow. While writing my program, what I want to do here? I want to follow my syntax. So an error which occurs due to improper use of statement. For example, I want to follow the rules, and while writing rule, suppose if I forget to follow my rules, and whatever the error I'm going to get at that time itself called semantic error. Consider the expression, that is C equal to A plus B. So this is the general rule I'm going to have. That means add A plus B, then store the result in C. Suppose if by miss, instead of writing C equal to A plus B, think that I have written A plus B equal to C. It is wrong statement, because here A plus B can be added, but whatever the value I'm going to get after adding A and B, the result is does not assign to C. I repeat, here I can able to add A and B. After adding A and B, whatever the result I'm going to get, that does not assign to C. So that kind of mistake itself called semantic error. So this kind of error itself called semantic error. Moving further, I'm going to have logical error. Now tell me, what is logical error? Here logical error is nothing but the error in our logic. So error in the programming logic itself called logical error. Logical error occurs when there are mistakes in the logic of the program. That means while writing program, if I make any mistake in my logic, whatever the error I'm going to get, that kind of error itself called logical error. Consider the simple example here. Think that I want to find the area as well as circumferences. Now tell me, what is the formula used to find the area? That is area equal to pi r square, and circumferences here 2 pi r. And while writing logic, if I may interchange area to circumferences and circumferences to area, what's going to happen? I'm going to get wrong output. So that wrong output itself called logical error, because what formula I'm going to have here? To find the area, I'm going to have pi r square. Instead of pi r square, if I have written 2 pi r, what's going to happen? I'm going to get wrong result. So that result itself called logical error. So unlike other errors, logical errors are not displayed. That means here we are not going to get any error message. We are going to get the output, and whatever the output we are going to get, that output itself wrong. So here logical errors are not displayed while compiling because the compiler does not able to understand logical error. So these are the internal error, that means the error in my programming logic, and this kind of errors are not identified or not understood by the compiler. So the example here is, to find the area of the circle, I'm going to have the formula, that is pi r square. Instead of writing pi r square, suppose if I have written pi, that is 2 pi r, then whatever the output I'm going to get, that is the wrong output, because here compiler does not provide any error, because compiler does not know what is the formula used to find the area of a circle. But human beings are able to understand what is the formula used to find the area of a circle as well as circumferences of the circle. So these kind of errors are called logical errors. That means error in the logic itself called logical error. So dear student, in my today's session, I started with the advantages of flowchart. Then I discussed what are the disadvantages of flowchart. Then we had discussion regarding pseudocode. Then we had discussion regarding programming or coding. Along with that, we had discussion regarding what is testing and what is debugging. Along with that, we had discussion regarding some of the errors we are going to face in our daily life. That is, what is syntax error, what is semantics error, and what is logical error, etc. Dear student, let's meet in my next session with some more information about problem solving methodology. Until then, keep watching and keep learning. Thank you.